Good morning and welcome to Beaver Creek Christian Church. Well, how sweet it is to gather with you all on a beautiful winter morning, isn't it? As we seek the Lord together, this morning we're going to be talking about the power of community and the danger of isolation and loneliness. So we thought we'd start with a new song. It speaks about this desire for authentic connection. So if you would you please stand with us? Let's sing this. It's kind of a fun one.
Chased and now faded. All the cheap thrills were only time wasted. Tell me why society's plans should define who I am. Shove it as a highway. All of my best friends are sick of pretending. We want the truth. Na 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 na. So much is missing. So give us the real thing. I don't want a stereotype to decide who I am. Never knew me anyway. I'm more trying to find next time. Never last. I'm gonna go another way. All of the lights I chased are now fading. Dim was right, but times are now changing. Tell me why society's plans should define who I am. Show me there's a higher way. All of my best friends are sick of pretending. We want the truth. So much is missing. So give us the real thing. I know it's you. Da 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 da. Da 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 da. Da 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 da. Da 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 da.
From my mother's womb, you have chosen me. Love has called my name. I've been born again to your family. Your blood flows through my veins. I'm no longer a slave to fear. I am a child of God. I'm no longer a slave to fear. I am a child of God. Oh, oh, you split the sea so I could walk right through it. My tears were drowned in perfect love. You rescued me so I could stand and sing. I am the child of God. You split the sea so I could walk right through it. My tears were drowned in perfect love. You rescued me so I could stand and sing. I am the child of God. I am the child of God. I am the child of God. I am the child of
Can you mute the MIDI on the computer?
My life is yours. My hope is in you.
Again, I want to thank you for coming this morning. Welcome. My name's Ed. I'm one of the pastors on staff here. And as Dave mentioned earlier, things are just a little bit different this morning. And one of the ways we want to do that is we're going to give you just a couple minutes here before our announcement video to do a couple things. First of all, we want to invite you, if you haven't already, to fill out the welcome card that's on your seat or close by, just to let us know you're here, or if there's a prayer request or anything we can do for you. But also, just if you haven't got a cup of coffee, or if you want to refill your cup, we got a couple tables in back. You can do that. So feel free. This is going to be kind of an interactive kind of thing, and this might for some of you might be a little uncomfortable, but that's okay. So over the next 2 to 3 minutes, fill out your card if you want. Go back and fill up your coffee. But we want to invite you to connect with a few other people, just to say hi, a holy howdy, whatever you want to do. Maybe if somebody you don't know, just introduce yourself and say thank you for being here. And so I'm going to give you a couple minutes to do that. So I would like everybody to stand back up. Stand back up. You can't say hi, walk around without saying up. So do that couple minutes. The announcement video will fire up.
Hi, good morning. If you don't know me, I am Christy Gatlin, the children's pastor here at Beaver Creek Christian Church. You can normally find me in the kids area on the other side of the cafe, hanging out with the 10 and under set here, discovering how Jesus works in and around them. Before I jump to the announcements, go ahead and grab that welcome card that was on the seat when you walked in and fill that out for me. It lets us know you're here, and if there's anything we can be praying about, write that down. The staff spends part of each of our weekly meeting praying for you, and if there's a specific need, we would love to be able to be praying for that. Speaking of prayer, as a church, we will have our next Call to Prayer event on February 24th from 6 to 7 p.m. upstairs in the warehouse. This event is an intentional time to pray over a specific topic or ministry, and this quarter we will be praying over the Great Commission and for opportunities to show and be the salt and light in the lives of those around us. We will also have a time of worship integrated into our experience. So join us February 24th from 6 to 7 p.m. in the warehouse, and you can park in the back. Next up, I want to tell you about our next City Serve event, Host a Hunt. This will be a super fun opportunity for our church to practice the art of neighboring. Remember that from our recent message series? Here's the gist of it. We are going to help your family host an Easter egg hunt for kids in your neighborhood. Don't have kids in your neighborhood? Well, you don't get off that easy. You can team up with another family or group to help them host a hunt as well. If you let us know that you are interested in hosting or helping to host a hunt, register on the BCC app or on the link at beavercreekchristian.org. We will provide you with a box that has almost everything you're going to need to have an amazing party. There's more information available out in the foyer on a card that will explain even more. We're recommending that you plan to host your party between March 15th and 31st. That's Easter. So let us know you're hosting a party by March 10th. We'll be able to get your kits prepared and ready for you. Remember, visit the app or website and get your team registered to let us know that you're hosting a hunt this March. Now, as I wrap up our announcements for the day, I want to remind you about all the ways that we have to give. We recommend downloading and using the BCC app, but you can also visit beavercreekchristian.org or drop cash or check in the blue boxes in the back. The last thing I have for you today is a recap of our Share the Love dinner from last weekend to show you all how that went who were not able to join us. Let's take a look.
He held his phone close, eyes searching for privacy. The man scarcely noticed the subway riders around him, or the 90-year-old artist sketching his hunched frame from across the train. In the 7 decades since Alex Katz first drew the outlines of commuters on New York City's early morning trains, the chattering riders and newspapers had all but gone. In their places were people who rode alone, together, the light in their eyes reflecting the glow of their smartphone. That was a quote from the Dallas Morning News. This short imagery is something that we see and all understand, but never really think deeply about. Why does it seem like less people are talking to each other in public? Why do we collectively prefer the dim glow of a smartphone screen? Do you remember your childhood neighborhood? Chances are, you probably felt like it was one big family. Everybody knew each other, celebrated together, and would offer help when needed. But in recent decades, this seems like it's no longer the case. People seem to keep to themselves more. And as a side effect, people are more lonely today than ever before. The number of men without any close friends has increased 5 times since 1990, and 10 times for women, though the total percentage of men feeling lonely is higher. On top of this, 3/4 of Gen Z report feeling lonely. Why have we drifted from each other? What is going on here? The trend started before the pandemic and even before smartphones, so it has to be something structural within society.
Good morning. Is it hard to say good morning after that video? My name's John. I'm one of the pastors here, and I know I say it every time I get up here, but I genuinely mean it. I'm excited to be here with you guys this morning, and I want to extend a thank you for braving the cold, the snow, the ice. We were talking during the coffee break about chipping our cars out, and I had to do that this morning. I hadn't moved my car since the snow, and I had to go forward and backwards. Mine's the only one that doesn't make it in the garage or the barn, and so I had to ramp up over the snow that was behind my car. So it was an adventure. But those who are joining us online as well, thank you for being with us, and we're a little jealous that you get to be in your warm, comfy homes right now. But we're excited that everyone's able to come together. Now and then at BCC, we kind of push pause and have a continuing series that we entitle Life Isn't Always Rainbows and Unicorns. It's a time where we want to push pause and take a look at issues that are prevalent in our culture, that are prevalent in our lives. We've journeyed down the path of looking at trauma. We've looked at anxiety. Actually, not too long ago, we looked at the benefits of counseling and therapy and kind of pushing back against that stigma that for some reason we, in our culture and even in church culture, builds up about seeking out professional assistance and conversation with professional psychologists, psychologists, counselors, coaches. And today we're going to look at something that's prevalent in our culture, prevalent in our lives. So much so that it's been coined an epidemic. Loneliness. Loneliness and isolation. 2013 to 2017, U.S. Surgeon General Vivek Murthy and his team made it a mission to do a listening tour nationwide. They wanted to meet with medical professionals. They wanted to meet with citizens and patients and hear from them their needs, hear from them their experiences of their medical care. Now, Vivek, in his book Together, he actually says, he goes, hey, in my mind, before the tour started, I had the list in my head. It was the same list that he had rambled off during his confirmation hearing back in 2013. That he was here's the topics that are going to race to the top: obesity, heart disease, diabetes, tobacco, alcohol, drug-related issues. And yes, those rose to the top now and then during this tour. But there was a thread that they were not anticipating in the slightest that connected story after story from state to state, from region to region in our country. From the couple who lost their son to an overdose, and the circle that they had around them prior to the death that all of a sudden just dissipated and disappeared following their son's death. They felt alone in their grief. To the at-home care for those taking care of a parent, a spouse, a child, feeling isolated and cut off from connection. Kudos to Murthy and his team for when they did come back, they did do what the tour said, was listen. And instead of just anticipating ahead of time, oh, here's what we're going to focus on, instead, they looked at what rose to the top. So much that in 2017, he coins the phrase, we are in a loneliness epidemic. Years before the epidemic we're all more familiar with and that was brought to the forefront. Before we dive too far into this conversation, though, I want to make sure that we define a few terms, just because even in my own life, I use these interchangeably too often. There's loneliness, there's isolation, and solitude. Now, often loneliness and isolation I've used synonymously, but they're not. Loneliness is actually this subjective feeling, this emotion, this mindset that we're lacking the social connection that you feel like you need. Or isolation is actually, it's an objective, physical state of being alone and out of touch with other people. So one is an emotion, a mental space. And one is a place. And a term that we won't look at, but because it is so prevalent, you're like, hey, Christ isolated himself. He got away. Yes, he did, in solitude. And that is a piece of isolation, intentional isolation. Stu spoke on it very well a few weeks ago as he was talking about Christ getting away to recharge, to regroup, to refocus, and then go back out to the mission. But the epidemic we're looking at is loneliness and isolation. For those engineers, those, not my people, but I love you guys anyway, those math-minded people, they came up with this formula to try to understand loneliness and to try to communicate loneliness a little bit more tangibly, I guess. So there's this formula that it's like loneliness is the difference between desired connection and perceived connection. The connection and the relationships and the depth of connection that I feel like I need versus what I perceive I'm connecting with others. And when there's a difference, there's loneliness. Now, I'm not trying to be cold and calculated with this, but just trying to get our minds wrapped around what loneliness is. It can feel like being stranded, abandoned, cut off, even when surrounded by people. What's missing in loneliness is that feeling of closeness, of trust, and the affection of genuine friends and loved ones, a community. If you guys are willing to be brave with me, if not, keep your hands down. But I'd just like everyone to raise their hand up. Okay, everyone just raise, if you're able to, raise your hand up. If you're at home, we can't see you, but we trust your hand is up. Just to be honest, within the past 6 months, let's go big number, 6 months, is there a point where you felt lonely? If you did, keep your hand up. If not, put your hand down. That's okay. Okay, you can put your hands down. It's an epidemic. We've all experienced it. To help us get our minds wrapped around this, loneliness, I love how they put this, it says, is a dimensional thing. It's a thing we can actually hold in a sense, that there's 3 dimensions to loneliness. There's this intimate emotional, which is this longing for a close confidant. Maybe it's a partner, maybe it's a BFF. This relational or this social dimension is this yearning for quality friendships, the depth of friendships, companionship, support. And then there's this collective dimension that we hunger for a network, a community of people who we share a sense of purpose, mission, and interest with. Now, here's the interesting thing about loneliness, and I'm just going to tell you right now, feel like I've been Alice for the past few weeks because I have fallen down so many rabbit holes just soaking up stuff about loneliness that I've like had to tell Amber, I'm like, you see me, right? You see, it started to get to me a little bit. But just this idea of loneliness is this, especially this dimensional loneliness. We could check off two of these dimensions. Like I feel like my formula of desired perception and perceived perception balances out, or I've got a surplus. But we can still experience loneliness on another dimension that maybe we don't feel like we've perceived to have checked off. That we don't feel like we have that in our life. It's prevalent. Even before Murthy came out with his statement of the epidemic, and even since, the studies have been numerous, and the stats have been pouring in. And then what's so interesting about stats with loneliness is I don't know how you fully grasp and how you collect that information, because loneliness has its own stigma of I don't want to let anyone know I'm lonely. Or I don't know how you collect data from people who isolate themselves from everyone. But even with the data they can bring in, 3 to 5 U.S. adults are considered lonely. %22% step into that space of often or always. Guys, that's 55 million people. That is more than adult cigarette smokers. That's double the amount of diabetes. And before we begin to say, oh, you know what, it's an age thing, 40% of 16 to 24s were reported being lonely. We see it everywhere. It's on the headlines. The biggest threat facing middle-aged men isn't smoking or obesity, it's loneliness. How social isolation is killing us. Lonelier than ever. We see it in our songs. We see it from the Beatles all the way to Akon and then the Super Bowl champion Taylor Swift. Okay? We see all these lyrics, they pop up, these songs, and this is just barely touching the surface on these songs. Ben, that's the next slide. Just a few of these songs, including Ohio's own Black Keys. Shout out to Akron. I lived there for a number of years, so. The Beatles in '66 said, all the lonely people, where do they all come from? All the lonely people, where do they all belong? I'll look at all the lonely people. Is the song playing in anybody's head right now? It's in mine. We see it in our movies, maybe most prevalent. But we see it in our movies. It seems like this Hollywood trope of like they're either in space at the Martian or moon, or they're on a deserted island or a very secluded place. It's everywhere. It's observational. It touches us because we know it. before any of you, again, jump to the conclusion, well, this is a new thing. This is a new thing. This is where our culture's going. It's technology. It's all these newfangled things. Let me just show you this clip from back when I was 2 years old.
The disease of the spirit. And people who have it think that no one cares about them.
Are you saying that Earthlings make each other lonely?
No, sir, I'm saying just the opposite. That they make themselves lonely. They're so busy looking out for number one, they don't have room for two.
It's too bad everybody down there can't get together and find a cure.
But here's the paradox, sir, because if they did get together, they wouldn't need one.
Here's the thing with loneliness. It's an emotion, yes. But studies have shown that it has such an impact on our lives. Mental health, yes. But to be honest, physical health. Murthy and his team, as they're looking at this, and many of others have looked at loneliness and the impact of it as well, they have attributed it as a root factor to high blood pressure, to heart disease, to obesity, depression, Alzheimer's, cancer, dementia. Maybe you've heard the stat about loneliness. This one seems to float around more than any others, that it has about as much equal health harm, physical harm to you as smoking 15 cigarettes a day, each and every day. That's what loneliness does. This is why we're having this conversation. It's not some random, like, oh, we drew a word out of the hat. Oh, loneliness, isolation. I guess we're going to go with that one. This is real. There's some myths about loneliness that we have to take care of first before we dive any deeper. Introverts, extroverts. During the coffee time, if you guys were able to be here, during the coffee time where some people were getting coffee, some people were filling out their cards, some people were talking, and others were sitting there going like, don't talk to me, don't talk to me, don't talk to me, don't talk to me. We moved that to a different part. If those of you, the 7 of you who were here when we first start, you guys know we greet each other. But we actually held off on that for a little bit to push all of us into a little bit of a different scenario. It may have been uncomfortable for some of you. Thank you for being willing to participate. But introverts and extroverts both need strong relationships in order to feel secure and a sense of belonging. This idea that, oh, introverts can be completely isolated and they don't feel lonely because we all need it. You go down the list, surrounded by people does not negate loneliness. There's a term for this that we'll talk about a little bit later called the lonely crowd. It was actually coined back in 1950. Do the math. That's how long we've been observing this. Loneliness is the same as physical isolation. It's not. There are some who are isolated, whether voluntary or involuntary, that have a way to cope. But physical isolation definitely oftentimes leads itself to that emotional and mental state of loneliness. You can't feel lonely in a relationship. Marriage solves it all. Who laughed out there? I'm just kidding. Having kids solves it all. Being close to family. Having a circle of friends. It's all healthy. It's all good. It does not automatically mean that an individual is not feeling lonely. Remember, loneliness is dimensional. Only older people get lonely. Loneliness isn't that big of a deal. It's easy to tell when someone is lonely. It's not. We all hide it well. And I say we because there's often that I feel lonely. And there's nothing that can fix feeling lonely. That myth, loneliness isn't a big deal. We see barely 2 chapters into the Bible. Now, you got to get this, you got to remember the situation, okay? This is like creation. God has just placed Adam in the garden and said, hey, do your job, work. Okay, Eve's not even in the picture. Sin is not in the picture. And yet God still says, in this 2 thumbs up, that is good, this is good, this is good, this is good, what he's created. He still makes the statement, it is not good for man to be alone. I will make a partner suitable for him. Again, some people read this and they automatically are like, well, then that means marriage solves loneliness and being alone. What that's saying is we are built for community. We are built for relationship. We are created in that way. And that even in a perfect scenario, God recognizes that, man, it is not good for him to feel alone, to feel lonely. So before we begin to lump loneliness in with sin or anything of that sort, I need you just to look like it was there. It is a part of us. Our emotions are not a bad thing. Feeling lonely at times, though, it's inevitable. Because maybe it's times where we feel like we can't find someone who can understand, who can empathize with our circumstances. Sometimes it's because we choose to isolate ourselves from others, or we choose to see our problems are bigger than God. However, we see throughout the Bible God's response to loneliness, and it's countless times that we see this over and over again. He reminds us that he is a living God. He is our God who has never left us in spite of how many times we have left him. Do you get that? He knows our thoughts. He knows our feelings and our hearts and our minds. And we see in Psalms 139 that God, he knows when we sleep. He knows when we wake up. He knows when we stand, when we sit. He knows what's in our hearts. He knows us when we were in our mom's womb. He knows us. He loves us. And he's never left us. Now, I say that, but I want to make sure you know that I am not trying to say, here's a magical pill that if you just repeat after me, poof, loneliness is gone. But it's a truth that we can hold on to, right? We can white knuckle in those times where we feel lonely, when we're in a space of isolation. I mean, we see it all over the place that God is with you. Matthew, Joshua, Deuteronomy, Psalms. All throughout the Bible. David experiences loneliness. In Psalm 25, he says, turn to me, be gracious to me, for I am lonely and afflicted. And he says, look and see. There's no one on my right hand. There's no one concerned for me. There's no refuge. There's no one. Can you imagine the anguish he's saying this with? There's no one who cares for my life. And then we think about the cross. We think about right before the cross, Jesus asking some of his disciples to come with him to the garden. I'm going to pray. We say that you could physically see the anguish, the hurricane of emotions that Jesus is going through. And it's hard for him to pray over the snoring that's happening next to him. He felt alone. On the cross, my God, why did you forsake me? Isolated and alone. Throughout Scripture, we see it talk about loneliness and in the midst of grief, in the midst of relationships, both broken relationships, single, difficulty in marriage. And every time we see God and Jesus point back to, I am with you and I will never leave you. I know you. You are fully, completely known. To every hair on your head, if you have one. Sorry. But I know every thought, I know every feeling in your heart. I know you and I love you. It's what he did on the cross for us. And if you are in a space of loneliness, of feeling alone, maybe any depth of relationship you've isolated yourself from, can we please start here with this truth? And right now, we're going to take time for those of you who've noticed we have not done communion yet either. But there are tables up front, there are some tables in the back. And I just want to encourage you to take the next few moments and rest in feel some of that fight against loneliness, recognizing that God knows you, loves you, and did all that for you. So feel free at your own time. There'll be a video playing. Take communion and have that time, just have that conversation with God. Let's do that now.
I see the city lights all around me. Everyone's obscure. 10 million people, each with their problems. Why should anyone care? As I can see, I'm not just a man fast lost in this
Keep us moving. There is loneliness in the midst of some of us. We know that. But there's also a piece that I want us to look at, because here's the thing, and thank you, God, so much for this. That yes, we have this vertical relationship with God and this promise, these promises that he loves us no matter what, that he knows us fully. But he also, in Genesis 2, we see it. He says, hey, it's not good for him to be alone. God could have easily said, hey, you have me. You need nothing else. But he saw the need, how he created us for this horizontal relationships. And the epidemic doesn't stop just out in the world. The epidemic of loneliness is in the church. And yet we see God designing the church and throwing these metaphors of body, of house, of family, of members of a household that are connected, supportive, mission-linked, carrying each other's burdens. And yet, Ed recently shared with me an article that just, oh man, wrecked me. And I had already, again, my Alice in the Wonderland deep dive that I just kept finding more and more, and Amber's trying to pull me out of this, on loneliness and isolation, that there's a friendship recession in our world, definitely in our country. If you did a YouTube search, and I don't recommend it for the simple fact that it will depress you, but if you did a search and said, I have no friends, there are thousands upon thousands of videos of individuals sitting in front of their camera, sitting in front of their screen, broken, sharing their hearts, frustrated. I don't know how to make friends. I don't want to have friends because too many of them hurt me, but I want friends. Like, I don't know what to do. Thousands. There's a subreddit, Are Lonely, that ranks in the top 1%. Get that, top 1% based on community size. This article that Ed shared with me is entitled The Lonely Crowd. Remember that term from before? Churches dying due to friendlessness. And I'm just going to read something here for you guys. It says this: I've lost count of the number of Christians who told me they either stopped attending church or left their church to join another one because they couldn't make any friends there. They report that the church people were friendly enough. They were hospitable and welcoming. They're nice to you, but no one becomes your friend. And it hurts when all that friendliness leads to friendlessness. You get that? In the 1950s, as I said, a sociologist, that's the right word this time, sociologist, coined the phrase, the lonely crowd. Meaning he used it to describe a collective of people who live according to like common traditions and conforming values, but they barely know each other or like each other. My question is, the church becoming or already this? Are you convicted at all? This is not heaping shame. This is not, it's you. It's us. It's the church, big C. Each of us sitting in this room or streaming online desire to connect, desire to belong. What if to belong, we have to learn and live out making friends beyond being friendly? That's not my own thought. There's stuff out there as well. That there's a usefulness to the way this room is set up, the way church is set up. This Greco-Roman seats face the stage. There's a usefulness to that at times. But I think there's a huge piece of that lends itself to the friend recession in churches. And so I'm going to ask you to do something. If you're here for the first time or the first couple times, or you're one of those people that during the coffee time, you're like, don't talk to me, don't talk to me, don't talk to me. You are not going to love me, okay? And I know we're up against time, but I want to do this, and we're going to speed through some of this stuff together. But I need us to wreck this room. And what that means is this. I want us to move chairs. If people need help, assistance moving chairs, either go to them or help them move their chairs. But I'd love for us to circle. Andy Stanley, a pastor in Atlanta, pretty well known, it has a phrase that circles are better than rows. And I believe with that. If I could believe with it more than 100%, I would. 100% believe that. And so I'm going to ask you to circle up. I'm going to ask you in groups at least 5 to 8, 5 to 9. Try not to get past 10. But I need you to move these chairs. Move the chairs. It's okay. They get moved afterwards. You guys moved them at the end anyway. So we can move chairs. They're movable. When you guys get into those circles, I'm going to ask you to do this as quickly as possible. But in those circles, move those around. Slide the chairs around. Help people around you. Again, if you're new, we don't do this every week. So don't be like, oh my goodness, I'm never going back to the circle church again. Circle up. Go around as best you can. Share your name, your birth date, your favorite type of food. And here's the thing. This is optional. This last one is optional. But if you're willing to be vulnerable, a moment you can remember experiencing loneliness. Go around your circles. We're going to give you guys a few moments. All right, I'm gonna propose something. We're gonna stay in these circles, Due to time, I want to keep us moving just a little bit. We have a few more things, and then if you guys haven't finished at least this exercise, remember those. Finish that before you leave. You don't have to leave right after everything's done. Okay, you can sit back down and chat for a second. That's okay. We'll allow. But what if? My question is this: what if we were a group of people, a gathering, a collective of people who live according to common traditions and conforming values, who decided and committed together to being friends? To making friends. What would that do to a community? What would that do to this community? What would that take from you to do it? What would that take from us to do that? To choose that our identity will be to make friends with each other. Not acquaintances, not a, hey, how you doing, hug, high five, thanks for the paper at the door. But actually getting to a depth with each other. What would that take to get to know someone who's looking for a church home, who comes in here for one of the first times, not to scare them and run into their face, but to genuinely not just be friendly, but like, I want to know who you are. We've looked at our own personal loneliness. We've looked at loneliness in the church. And real quickly, I want us to look at the journey with you. Yes, it's a journey with each other, but there's also this idea of there's an epidemic of loneliness surrounding us. 55 million people just in the U.S. What is our responsibility when it comes to that loneliness? What is our part in each of our personal worlds, those who cross paths with us? I'm on a journey with you. I need to find you where you are on your path. Maybe you're isolated on your path, and I need to step out and come find you. Maybe it's asking the question that we talked about a while back, we've talked about a few times, is who am I connecting with? Who am I being intentional with? Can we hold on to, and it's the reason I laid all the groundwork I did to identify that loneliness is killing people. Emotionally, mentally, physically. And we're called to love those people. So right now, I need you to do me a favor. I need you, if you have your phone with you, bring your phone. Get your phone out. If you don't, if you have somebody who has your number, they can text it to you. But get out your phone. We've done this a while back. I know some of us struggle to figure out how to do this, but we're going to try. Your neighbor can help you. You're going to text yourself. You're going to text yourself 3 names of people that maybe you haven't been in contact in a while, people that you might suspect are lonely. Again, it's hard to see that. Or maybe people you know that are isolated, voluntarily or involuntarily. Think of 3 names, text yourself those 3 names. And while you're doing that, I want to think for a moment as I ask the question, what can we do outside these walls? What if we dreamed big? There was a friend of mine who was a pastor in Texas at a large church for a number of years, and their team, their leadership team, they owned this idea and this vision that their team had, and that is that nobody in assisted living would be isolated. Yes, they're surrounded by people at assisted living centers, but oftentimes they had an agreement with the assisted living centers around them, facilities around them, that if somebody started to not have visitors, that they would add them to a list and alert them, and they would make them part of the list where weekly they'd send somebody to go meet with that person. Now, I'm saying this in a scope of that is dreaming big. They have a lot of resources at this church when they did this, but I love that idea that nobody's going to be isolated or lonely. What does that look like in the schools? 40% of 16 to 24-year-olds lonely. Maybe that's tutoring. Maybe there's something about foster care. I don't know, but what if we just dreamed big? What if God started to put something on your heart and in your mind, stirring up in your soul and spirit? But at the same time, I don't want to just be like, here's a bunch of, there's wins. I love it. I fell in love with the idea of this church championing, loving the international community, refuge communities. I love that Impact Garage is loving people who feel lonely, who feel isolated because they can't get to their jobs. And they're coming alongside them to fix their cars and to help them in a financial way. I love the preschool we have, loving families who maybe both parents or guardians have to work and they have to have somewhere for their kid. And there's adults just loving on these kids, loving on these families. A lot of families moving in from the military, not knowing the area, yet this is kind of their anchor when they drop their kids off here. We just celebrated that last night at a rec center. A bunch of families I had never met before because they dropped their kids off so early in the morning, but I just never get across paths with them. So we're doing that as well, and we're doing it, but what has God stirred on your heart? The last thing I want to throw at you guys is I want you guys, if you're willing to commit to those 3 names this week, finding a way to reach out to them. Well, part of my deep dive, I came across empathy-focused phone calls. If you've never heard of that, I hadn't either. But there's a study that even just 10 minutes of a phone call does dramatic effects to someone's loneliness and isolation. If it's 3 names, if it's 10 minutes on a phone, if you don't meet with them in person, can you spare 30 minutes this week? So in your groups, whether that, I was going to say whether you pray alone or not, don't pray alone. If because of time, we'll just pick one person in your group to do it. But pray for each other, for those names, and pray for courage. The band's going to finish us off with a song, and let's worship a God who knows us and loves us. Thank you guys for your patience. Can't wait to see what God's going to do through BCC as we attack, and I know that sounds like a harsh word, but we really want to attack this thing that's killing people, attacking isolation, attacking loneliness, and being intentional about it. I believe that's our DNA, that's our heartbeat. You already see it in us, and I think we can continue to grow in that way. So pray together. The band will close us out. Thank you.
found. He is my light, my strength, my song. This cornerstone, this solid ground, firm through the fiercest trial and storm. What heights of love, what depths of peace, when fears are still, when striving cease. My comforter, my all in all, here in the love of Christ I stand. Light of the world by darkness slain, then bursting forth in glorious day, up from the grave he rose again. And as he stands in victory, since curse has lost its grip on me, for I am his and he mine, bought with the precious blood of Christ. This is the power of Christ in me. From life's first cry to the final breath, Jesus commands my destiny. No power of hell, no speed of man can ever blind me from His hand. So He reserves calls me home, here in the power of Christ I
Love that song. It's one of my favorites. Thank you for coming this morning. You know, the thing we talked about, loneliness, isolation, is kind of a two-sided coin, and we want you to think about that this morning. If there's something on your heart that you feel you're carrying alone, we want to help you carry that. We've got a team of folks over here to my right who would love to pray with you about those things, or if any one of us with an orange line would be glad to do that as well. But secondly, I just want to remind you, just hopefully you were able to text yourself those folks, and take some time this week just to reach out to those people. You might make a huge difference just because the Lord has laid those people on your heart. Have a great week. Go in peace.